Ed mentioned, I work for the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. We're one of 36 conservation authorities across Ontario, and we're a little unique in that we got this large lake in the middle of the watershed, and for that reason we have an on-lake monitoring program where we do various things to help support other agencies. So a bit of a background there, our role in lake research. We started in May 2008 was the first year that we started our on-lake monitoring program. And kind of the background for setting this up was to address the concerns of the lake residents. They wanted to know more about what was going on with the lake and the environmental health of Lake Simcoe. So we started this science and monitoring program, and we work with Ministry of the Environment and also Ministry of Natural Resources. Ministry of the Environment has been working on the lake since 1980, and they look at offshore water quality, plankton, algae, reports of pollution, that sort of thing. Ministry of Natural Resources looks after things fish related. This left a big data gap in the lake monitoring. It wasn't really covering what people wanted to know about the lake. So for that reason, we measure things like nearshore water quality and the shallow water habitats. We also look at aquatic plants, which I'll be talking about today, also invasive species. We also investigate new and emerging issues on Lake Simcoe as well. So it's a little bit about what we do. Aquatic plants I'll be talking about today are one of the big things that people are concerned about on Lake Simcoe, and I guess elsewhere. They are the public's #1 lake concern. On average, over the past decade, I think they account for about 53% of all the inquiries I receive at the office. And this year, it's a little higher. It's probably around 75 or 80% so far this year about the amount of calls and emails and so on that we've gotten. And I think that's just because it's a warmer year, it's more favorable for plant growth, and also with the COVID and the pandemic situation, people seem to be at their cottage more often and staying there for an extended period, and they tend to notice things that are going on with the lake. Aquatic plants are legally protected in Ontario, so you can't just run down and start ripping them off on the shoreline because you don't like them there. They're important for fish habitat and also as a nursery for warm water fish and the bait fish and so on. And they kind of buffer wave action and reduce erosion as well. They slow kind of the incoming waves that are coming in, so they're actually protecting your shoreline and your property to a little bit. And we always stress to people that they're supposed to be there, and even healthy lakes have a plant community, but the amount of plants increases when there's surplus nutrients, because plants, just like the plants on your lawn and your garden and so on, use phosphorus and nitrogen. When you get more of these compounds in the lake, they tend to increase in the amount, and also with increased water clarity as well. When zebra mussels and quagga mussels get into a lake, they start filtering out all the plankton and kind of the suspended solids that are in the water, and that increases the amount of habitat for plants, and you're going to wind up getting more plants in your lake. So the results of 12 years of monitoring on the lake, overall we found about 23 species in Lake Simcoe. Most of them are common ones that are found across South Central Ontario, especially in lakes with higher nutrient loads. If you can follow my little cursor here, things like coontail at the top, water weeds and so on, aquatic mosses, and then there's all kinds of pond weeds that we have in Lake Simcoe. 3 of these species are invasive. Crispy pondweed or curly leaf pondweed was first found in 1971. We have Eurasian water milfoil, which causes a lot of problems in a lot of lakes. We found that in Lake Simcoe in 1984, it was reported. And what we'll be spending most of the talk about today, Starry Stonewort, kind of at the bottom here, that was found in 2009. And the picture at the side just shows a mass of this Starry Stonewort kind of mixed in with native muskgrass and also native stoneworts as well that we found doing our plant monitoring. So our plant monitoring program, what we do for the big survey, we go out every 5 years. We survey 244 sites in the lake. We use a grab sample. We collect the plants. We take them back to the lab. We identify them. We weigh them. We find out what the mass is in certain areas. So we did this survey 3 times now, 2008, 2013, and 2018. And these 3 maps just show where the plants were located in Lake Simcoe. So the green color, anything that's green is the plant habitat area, and the darker the green color means the higher biomass or the higher amount of plants that we have. So Cook's Bay, kind of on the south, click that, on the south here, beside that sign that says Keswick, that is a kind of a shallow, nutrient-rich part of the lake. There's always been lots of plants there, but you can see 5 or 6 other areas around the lake that have these dark green colors. And as you move from left to right across the 3 maps, you can see there's more and more of this dark green color that's kind of creeping into the picture. And the amount of plants on average on Lake Simcoe, it's increased about 5-fold over the 10 years of monitoring that we see here. And most of that increase, most of those dark green colors, especially in kind of the eastern side of the lake. That's all Starry Stonewort that tended to take over. I'll be talking about that a little bit more later on. So change in species diversity over these 10 years, massive increase in Starry Stonewort. So this bar graph just shows the percentage of the lake-wide biomass or the lake-wide plant community of each of the four main species is what I call them. Green, native coontail, blue is native muskgrass, or it's also known as Cara, and yellow is invasive Eurasian water milfoil, and of course red is Starry Stonewort. And over the 10 years, you can see a big increase in Starry Stonewort. At the expense, there's been a decrease in all the other species native, and it even outcompeted Eurasian water milfoil, which is a fairly aggressive invader itself. And currently, Starry Stonewort is about 2/3 of the total plant biomass that is in Lake Simcoe, or at least it was in 2018. So what is this Starry Stonewort, or this invasor? This is a picture of, there's one plant kind of on the right-hand side of that slide that kind of shows what it looks like, but it's usually seen in these dense masses or these dense amounts. People have taken to calling them pillows because they look like these kind of underwater pillows or clouds, and that kind of lower picture shows what you probably see when you look into the water and you see these masses of Starry Stonewort. So it's native to Western Europe and also Japan. And it's interesting to note that it's actually an endangered species or a species of concern in these areas. So they're looking at restoring or increasing the amount of Starry Stonewort in their areas, whereas we're looking to get rid of it in North America. So the first report of it was found in the St. Lawrence River in 1974. It was found just south of Montreal. And then in 1978, it was found in Alexandra Bay in New York, just across the river from Kingston. First reports of it in Ontario were about 2009. We found it in Lake Simcoe, and then it was also found in Presque Isle Bay on the Lake Ontario shoreline at kind of the eastern end of the Trent-Severn Canal. It is a macroalgae, so it's technically not an aquatic plant. It's actually a large plant-like algae, and this is where the devil is in the differences. It changes how it uses phosphorus in the water, and it also changed how it gets listed in the invasive species monitoring programs as well. Macroalgae, they have two sexes, so there's a male Starry Stonewort and a female Starry Stonewort, but in North America we've only ever seen the male plant, so this is why we think it's probably an invasive species, is that we have never found a female Starry Stonewort in North America anywhere where it's been found. And it's a little bit different from aquatic plants in that they don't have roots, so all their nutrients come from the water, whereas aquatic plants get most of their nutrients from the sediment on the lake bottom. Starry Stonewort takes all its nutrients from the surrounding water. Here's just kind of a zoom in of the picture. So that top picture shows kind of what it looks like with its branchlets and its kind of branches that are sticking off. It's similar to some native macroalgae. So across the bottom, we've got 4 species. So Starry Stonewort is on the far left with the red title. That's what it looks like. And there's 3 to 5 similar other species that it really looks like as well. Cara is native species, and also Nutella is a native stonewort that we have. But it's different in that it grows much bigger. Starry Stonewort can get up to 3 to 4 feet in length. How you tell it apart is that if you count the branchlets, or kind of the side twigs, if you will, where it sticks off the main stem, there's 4 to 6 on Starry Stonewort, and Cara tends to have a lot more, 6 to 16. Another way to look at it is if in summertime, where these kind of branchlets come off the various stems and so on, you can see these orange balls. And that middle picture on the right shows some of these orange balls. They're the male reproductive structure that is used for reproducing. And then in the fall, in that bottom picture, it shows these distinctive white stars, or they're called bulbils. And these are kind of the overwintering structures. You can think of them as almost like a seed-like structure, and they fall to the bottom in the sediment. And then in the following spring, they start hatching out, and they start a whole new colony of Starry Stonewort. So initial reports of Starry Stonewort in Ontario was first found in Presque Isle or Presque Isle Bay to Kingston in 2013. So that was the official report. Some students did a study on it, and they published it in 2016. So that's where they found it. I've talked to people that work in the yacht clubs in Presque Isle, Trenton, and also Belleville. They had reports of what they called an extra weedy Cara, or a problem with with aquatic plants starting in 2009, and they had to start scooping this stuff out, and then that maintaining so that they could get boat traffic through. And it tended to go up and down from year to year. So this is one of the first reports that we had of it. It was kind of on the Lake Ontario shoreline starting in 2009. In Lake Simcoe, we first found the white star-shaped structures in a benthic sample. We go out every fall. We collect benthic invertebrate samples off the bottom of the lake. So that red dot kind of up on the northeast corner of Lake Simcoe, that's where we collected this benthic sample. And when we were picking through, we were identifying what invertebrates and insects and so on were present. We came across these white stars. We were kind of shocked to see them. We weren't really sure what they were. And then I remembered that I had gone to an invasive species lecture a few years before, and this seemed to be Starry Stonewort. Following year, we got a call from a marina, which was at the outlet where Lake Simcoe meets Lake Couchiching, so where that green dot is at the top of the map on the right. The marina called us and said we have a real problem with aquatic plants, and we went up, and that picture was what we took at the time. You can see it's a massive amount of Starry Stonewort that's kind of floating on top of the water. What this marina had done was that they had received permission from the province to treat their water with herbicide, and diquat is the only herbicide which is legally allowed to be used in Ontario. It's effective against Eurasian water milfoil, but unfortunately the Eurasian milfoil was keeping the Starry Stonewort in check. So as soon as you give Starry Stonewort unlimited resources, it kind of takes over wherever it was. So it completely displaced the Eurasian water milfoil after they had sprayed this herbicide. So it was 2010. 2011, we did some sampling Cook's Bay, so that orange dot on the south, and we found Starry Stonewort had turned up for the first time in that area of the lake. And it was found in about 15% of sites. 2013, that map that I showed you before was the whole lake survey, and Starry Stonewort made up about a quarter of the total aquatic plant biomass in Lake Simcoe at that time. And it was interesting in that 2-year period from 2011 to 2013, the amount of Starry Stonewort in Cook's Bay had increased from about 1.5% of the total amount of plants to 6%. So it had increased about fourfold just in that 2-year period. So it's very aggressive, very fast growing. 2013, 2014, it popped up in Lagoon City. So that's a yellow dot kind of on the map on the right. Lagoon City, satellite shot of it is that other picture at the bottom. It's one of these canal estates communities where they kind of built it so that there's lots of canals and every house has kind of a waterfront property where you can tie your boat up to and so on. So there's not a lot of flow in these canal communities, so they get a lot of aquatic plants growing. They've received permission again to spray diquat as a treatment for Eurasian water milfoil, which was impeding boat traffic through. Again, nothing was done to treat the amount of phosphorus going into the water or to increase the water flow, which is moving through. The first year after they sprayed, they had an increase in harmful blue-green algae, which meant that nobody could use the water. And from the second year onward, they've had massive increase in the amount of Starry Stonewort. They've actually got backhoes that go in and drive along these roads where they intersect the canals, and then they kind of scoop out massive amounts of Starry Stonewort. And they take it out by the truckload every single summer, and it has to be kept ongoing. So Starry Stonewort trends in Lake Simcoe. So these are 3 maps that are similar to the ones that I showed you earlier. The green area shows where Starry Stonewort is likely to be found in Lake Simcoe. 2008, there was none present. We found it in 2009 up in kind of the northeast quarter. 2013, it was about 1/3 of the entire plant biomass. And then 2018, the last time we did it, it was 2/3 of the plant biomass. And it's now the dominant shallow water species in Lake Simcoe. Eurasian water milfoil, native muskgrass used to be the dominant species, and it's been completely displaced by Starry Stonewort. So it's kind of choking out the shoreline areas in the lake. Starry Stonewort in Ontario, it's what I call an under-the-radar invader. It's not widely known. It's not widely reported. When I found it in 2009, I went to report it on the Ontario Invasive Species website. They also have an app. That's the EDDS Ontario app. It's not even listed on that, so I had to report it through the U.S. Geological Survey site. So the Americans actually know more about Starry Stonewort in Ontario than people in Ontario do. It wasn't listed on the invasive species website because the way it's set up, it's only geared to reporting plants or animals. And as I said, Starry Stonewort is a macroalgae, so it doesn't fit into one of those 2 categories, so they kind of ignored it for a while. But I was talking with somebody that works at the Invasive Species Center, and they said they're happy to report that they finally got permission to add it to the reporting website. It may still take a while for it to get actually into the system and onto one of the upgrades for the apps or also the websites as well. But it is in the process, so we are slowly making progress with this. So Starry Stonewort, I knew it was in Lake Simcoe, but Lake Simcoe is kind of in the middle of South Central Ontario here, so it had to come from somewhere. So I started making phone calls around and asking people if they had seen Starry Stonewort and where it had come from and where it was reported at. So where I currently know where it is across Ontario is every one of these kind of pink pins as are spread across. And when I started looking at that path pretty much exactly follows the path of the Trent-Severn Waterway, which goes from Lake Ontario through the Georgian Bay. And it seems every parts of the river and almost every lake in between, from Severn Sound right through to Presqu'île Bay, or also Trenton as well, seems to have Starry Stonewort in it. Last fall, I